The Georgia sun beat down on Thornhill Plantation with the kind of heat that made the air shimmer above the cotton fields. It was August 1852, and the earth seemed to crack under the weight of another harsh summer. In the quarters behind the main house, where enslaved people lived in small wooden cabins with gaps wide enough to let in rain and cold, a man named Caleb sat on the dirt floor holding his youngest daughter. Caleb was 32 years old, though the scars on his back made him look older. He had strong hands, rough from years of picking cotton, and eyes that had learned to hide everything he felt. His wife Ruth had died 2 winters ago from sickness, leaving him with 3 children: Daniel, who was 14 and already working the fields, Miriam, who was 10 and helped in the kitchen, and little Naomi, only 6, who still had bad dreams about the day their mother stopped breathing. The overseer, a man named Cobb, was known for his cruelty. He believed that fear kept people working, and he used that fear with great care. Every week he would pick someone for a lesson, using some small mistake, real or made up, to justify punishment in front of everyone. That morning, Caleb had been working his row when he noticed Naomi standing at the edge of the field, crying. She had been sent to bring water but had tripped and spilled half of it. Cobb saw her, saw the waste, and started toward her with his whip ready. Caleb did not think. He just moved, stepping between the overseer and his daughter. He told the man it was his fault and that he had asked her to hurry. He offered to work extra to make up for the spilled water. Cobb's face turned red. Being challenged even a little in front of other workers was something he could not allow. He asked Caleb if he thought he could speak up to him, and Caleb replied that he was just asking for mercy for the child. Before we continue this look into one of Georgia's darkest stories, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching from? Share your location in the comments. And if this is your first time on our channel, subscribe now, because what you are about to hear is a story that official history tried to hide, but memory refused to forget. That afternoon, Cobb dragged Caleb to the storage shed. This was where they kept supplies, including barrels of bread and meal that sometimes went bad in the damp air. In one corner sat a pile of bread that had been rejected even for the workers' food. It was covered in thick green and black mold, crawling with bugs and smelling of rot. Since Caleb was so worried about waste, Cobb told him he was going to eat every piece and thank him for the food. Caleb looked at the moldy pile. His stomach turned, but he knew refusing would mean the whip or being sold away from his children. So he picked up the first piece covered in blue-green mold and bit into it. The taste was bitter and sharp, like eating dirt mixed with spoiled meat. The texture was slimy in some parts and crumbly in others. He chewed and swallowed, trying not to get sick. Cobb stood watching with a small smile. He ordered Caleb to eat another, and Caleb did. He kept eating until Cobb finally grew bored and walked away, warning him that there would be more if he ever stepped out of line again. That night, Caleb could not keep any food down. He got sick repeatedly as his body rejected what he had been forced to eat. Daniel and Miriam stayed with him, wiping his face with cool water and whispering prayers. Naomi held his arm, terrified. Caleb told her he would be fine, but he was not sure he believed it. 3 days passed. The vomiting stopped, but something else began. He felt a fever. His skin was hot, yet he shook at night. His stomach hurt constantly, with a deep pain that would not leave. But worse than the physical pain was the fear of showing weakness. Any sign of illness could mean losing his food or being accused of faking to avoid work, so Caleb went back to the fields. He moved slowly at first, his body fighting every move. The other workers noticed but said nothing, knowing that drawing attention would only cause trouble. An older man named Solomon, who worked next to him, slipped extra cotton into Caleb's bag when the bosses were not looking. He told Caleb he needed to see Old May because she knew about healing. Old May was nearly 70 and lived in a cabin at the far end of the quarters. People went to her in secret after dark. That night, Caleb went to her. Her cabin smelled of dried plants. She asked what had happened, and Caleb told her about the moldy bread. May's face darkened. She said that poison would work through his body and that fungus like that takes root. She gave him a bitter tea and told him to drink it every night. But the tea did not stop what was happening. The mold spores he had eaten had indeed taken root. In his stomach and his insides, tiny colonies began to grow, feeding on the damage and spreading in the warm environment. Caleb began to notice strange things. His sense of smell became very sharp. He could smell the bosses coming before anyone else and could smell rain hours before it arrived. His night vision got better. He could see clearly in the dark, and his hearing sharpened until he could hear whispers from far away. At first he thought it was just the fever, but the changes stayed and grew stronger. Daniel noticed that his father's eyes looked different at night, saying they almost seemed to shine. Caleb felt different and changed in ways he could not explain. The pain in his stomach turned into a constant awareness of something living inside. In the fields he began to work with a speed that surprised everyone. His hands moved faster, and his body did not get tired. Cobb noticed but thought it was just fear. But it was not fear, it was something else. By the third week, Caleb realized he was transforming. The fungal colonies had spread into his blood, creating a relationship with his body that went against everything known about biology. The fungi released chemicals into his system that changed his body's responses and structure. It was as if his body was learning to talk to the fungus, and the fungus was making his body better in return. He needed less food now. His muscles stayed strong despite the hard labor. Cuts healed faster than normal. But the biggest change was internal. Caleb found he could sense people's feelings, like their fear or anger. When Cobb came near, Caleb could feel the man's mood. This saved him several times as he learned to stay out of sight when danger was close. The other workers noticed that Caleb always avoided the worst trouble. Solomon approached him one night and said people were seeing the change. Caleb admitted he did not know what was happening. Solomon suggested that maybe he was being prepared for something. He was right. Across the plantation, tension was growing. The owner had bought more people, and the cotton crop was huge, which meant more pressure and longer hours. There were whispers about plans to escape or rise up. Caleb used his sharp hearing to catch these secrets, and an idea began to form. What if his change was meant to help them all be free? October brought cooler nights. The cotton work was done, giving the workers a small break. Caleb used this time to test his new skills. He would slip out at night, moving silently through the woods. He could see heat and movement in the dark. He found his strength had grown, and he could react to things almost instantly. Most importantly, he found that other people felt calmer when he was around. Old May noticed this power and warned him that the bosses would kill anything they were scared of. One night, 3 men asked Caleb to walk with them to the woods. There, about 15 others were waiting, risking punishment just by meeting. A woman named Esther mentioned a route to the north called a railroad, made of safe houses and guides. It was dangerous, and the punishment for getting caught was terrible. Solomon told the group they needed something more than just running. They needed something to make the bosses afraid. All eyes turned to Caleb. He felt their hope and felt the fungus inside him responding to their fear and determination. He told them he would help but needed a plan and time. They decided to prepare for a few months. Caleb began to wonder if his change could be shared. He started with Solomon, who had a cough that would not go away. They used small amounts of moldy bread with May's help. After 2 weeks, Solomon was stronger and could see better in the dark. Slowly, others tried it too. Within a month, there were 12 changed people on the plantation. They could work harder, heal faster, and sense danger. They had to be careful not to show too much improvement, or the bosses would get suspicious. Cobb was pleased at first, thinking his cruelty had made them work better, but he began to feel that something was wrong. He had a feeling that he could not explain. Caleb especially worried him because he never got sick or tired. One morning, Cobb hit Caleb to test him. Caleb did not fall or cry out, which made Cobb even more suspicious. He told the plantation owner that something was wrong with the workers, but the owner told him he was being paranoid. He said if they were working, well, he should leave them alone. But Cobb could not let it go. He began watching them even more closely, looking for any proof of what was making them different. Noticed they seemed to move as one, talking without words. He saw how they assisted each other, and how they knew he was coming before he turned a corner. One night, he followed Solomon to a hidden gathering. The forest clearing was lit by a single covered lamp. 18 people sat in a circle, including Caleb. They were talking about the plan to run away, checking the map Esther got from the Quaker family, and picking the best time. Cobb watched from the dark with a racing heart. This was the proof he needed. He should go back and tell Master Thornhill right away to bring men with weapons and dogs. But something held him back. There was something special about the way these people moved. Even sitting still, they had a kind of power he had never seen in enslaved people. It made him pause and feel unsure. He chose to stay and learn more, but as he backed away to leave, a branch broke under his boot. Right away, Every person in the clearing looked at him. In the faint light, their eyes glowed like the eyes of animals, shining with a strange light. Fear hit Cobb hard. He turned and sprinted away. Behind him he heard them moving. They were hazing him. He crashed through the bushes, and branches scratched his face. His chest hurt and his heart throbbed, but they were much quicker. In moments they had him trapped. Caleb walked forward. In the dark, his changed looks were easy to see. His skin had a soft glow, his eyes caught the tiny bit of light, and he moved with a grace that was not human. "Mr. Cobb," Caleb said softly, "you should not have followed us." Cobb stood in the middle of the group, breathing heavily. 19 pairs of eyes watched him, and they looked like they were no longer quite human. He was a big man who was used to fighting and making others afraid, but now he felt terror in every part of his body. "What are you?" he asked in a whisper. "Still human," Caleb replied, "but changed and made stronger because of the punishment you gave me." Cobb remembered the moldy bread he had forced Caleb to eat. He had wanted to shame him and break his spirit. Instead, he had made something he did not understand. "You are planning to leave," Cobb said, trying to sound like he was still in charge. "I heard you." "Yes," Caleb said. There was no reason to lie. "Master Thornhill will catch you," Cobb warned. "He can try," Solomon said. "The question is what we do with you. We cannot let you go back and talk." The circle closed in. Cobb was so scared he almost lost control. He had hurt many people before without feeling bad, and now he was at their mercy. "Are you going to kill me?" he asked with a shaky voice. Caleb was quiet. Inside him the fungus felt the anger and fear of everyone in the circle. He could feel they wanted to get rid of the threat. But he also remembered his wife Ruth, who spoke of kindness, and his mother, who said violence only brings more death. He knew that killing Cobb would change them into something bad. "No," Caleb said. "We are not killers. That is what they are, not us." "Then what?" Moses asked. "Let him Oh, so he can bring the law." "We will give him a choice," Caleb said. He looked at Cobb. "You cannot go back to your old life, but you could come with us." The others argued loudly. They did not want to bring the man who had treated them so badly for years, but Caleb raised his hand. "Listen, he knows the roads and the guards. That information could save us. He will betray us." Isaac said, "Not if he has changed too." Caleb answered. He looked at Cobb. "The same thing that changed us can change you. It will make you strong, but it will also make you feel what we feel. The fungus connects us. You would be joined to us." Cobb looked at him with horror. "You want me to eat that mold and become like you?" "It is that, or we leave you tied up here," Caleb said. "By the time someone finds you, we will be gone. But you will have to explain to Master Thornhill why you were spying. He does not like mistakes. It was not a real choice. If Cobb went back without stopping them, he would be in trouble. If he was found tied up, he would look weak or guilty. His job would be over, and he might go to jail." "But will it kill me?" Cobb asked. "You do not know," Caleb said. "Some people die, but most live and change. They become part of something bigger." Cobb looked at them. They had every reason to kill him, but they had not. That gave him hope. "If I do this and live, what happens?" he asked. "Then you come north and help us escape, and you live as a free man who does not hurt others. And if I say no?" Caleb looked stern. "Then we leave you here and let fate decide." Cobb knew he had to do it. "Give me the bread." Old May came forward with a cloth. She showed him bread covered in green mold. "This will make you very sick at first," she said. "If you live past 3 days, you will change." Cobb took it with shaking hands. His gut told him no, but he wanted to live. He ate the first piece. It tasted terrible. He gagged, but swallowed. He ate more until May told him to stop. They took him to an old cabin in the woods. Solomon and Moses watched him, looking like they hoped he would die. Cobb spent the night very sick, shaking and seeing things, but he lived, and by the 3rd day the changes started. His senses got sharp. His body felt different. He started to feel things like kindness and the pain of others. The fungus was joining his mind, breaking down the walls he had built to be mean. It forced him to feel the hurt he had caused others. It was very painful. By late February, they were ready. There were 23 people total. They picked a dark night when the master was busy with a party. The dogs were put away so they would not bark at guests. Caleb talked to his children one last time. He told them they were going on a hard trip, but they would be free. Naomi asked if free meant they would always be a family, and Caleb said yes. They met at an old barn. They carried small bags of food. Cobb was there, and he was different now. He could no longer see people as property because he felt their emotions. He had become more human. He told them the best way to go and how to avoid guards. They moved in small groups. Those who were enhanced stayed at the front and back to watch for danger. Caleb could hear everything and see in the dark. He could smell the river before they got there. The first few hours were fast. They reached the river at dawn. The water was cold and deep. Caleb told the strong ones to make a chain in the water. Everyone held on and crossed safely. On the other side, they hid in thick trees during the day. They heard horses and voices nearby. The master had sent men to find them, but they stayed on the roads and did not look in the deep woods. As it got dark again, they moved on. Master Thornhill was very angry. He had lost a lot of money and looked bad to his neighbors. He took 12 armed men and dogs to hunt them down. The trackers found their prints by the river and thought they would catch them fast, but they did not know these people were enhanced. The group could move for a long time without getting tired, and Cobb knew all the hunters' tricks. He told them to split up to confuse the dogs. The hunters followed Caleb's group. By the fourth day, they were close. Caleb heard them coming. He told the people who were not enhanced to hide in a cave. He and 5 others stayed out to fight. The hunters arrived and saw Caleb standing alone. Master Thornhill told him to give up, saying they were his property. Caleb said they were people and would not go back. When the men tried to grab him, Caleb moved with amazing speed and knocked them down. Isaac and Hannah helped, moving too fast for the men to hit. They looked like they were appearing out of nowhere. Cobb showed himself and warned the men to go back. The hunters got scared. They realized these were not normal people. One planter said it was not worth dying for. They voted to leave, and Thornhill had to go back with them. Caleb waited until they were gone before calling the others out. They had won that night. It took 3 more weeks to reach the Ohio River. They traveled in the dark and stayed at safe houses run by brave Quaker families. One old woman died on the way, but she died free. On March 15th, they saw the Ohio shore. They used a small boat to cross in groups. When Caleb stepped onto free ground, he fell to his knees. He was finally there. All 22 survivors met on the shore as the sun came up. They prayed and thanked God for their freedom. Then they went their separate ways to start new lives. Some went to Canada, and others stayed in Ohio. Caleb's family moved near Cleveland. He worked in a factory and was paid for his labor. His kids went to school and played without fear. The enhancement stayed in their bodies and was passed down to their children. Cobb spent his life helping others to make up for his past. Years later, Caleb told his grandkids the story. He told them that the bread meant to break him actually gave him the power to be free. He told them that sometimes the worst thing that happens can lead to the best thing. They found a way because they were brave. The story became a legend. Some people didn't believe it, but those who knew the truth understood. Some of the survivors even fought in the Civil War later on. They proved that even in the darkest times, there is always a way to find hope and freedom. The transformation of Caleb and his people was more than a biological anomaly. It was a physical manifestation of a spirit that refused to be digested by the machinery of slavery, turning the very waste of the plantation into a fuel for liberation that would vibrate through the DNA of their descendants for generations to come. As the years bled into decades and the Civil War eventually tore the old world asunder, the legend of the glow-eyed walkers of Georgia persisted in hushed whispers among those who knew that the woods held secrets deeper than any census could record. Caleb lived to see his grandchildren read books by the dim light of a room where they didn't need a lamp, their eyes reflecting a heritage of survival that was both terrifying and beautiful, a constant reminder that the scars on a man's back do not define the limits of his soul. Even Cobb, the man who had once been the architect of their misery, lived out his days in a state of perpetual penance, his own mind forever altered by the fungal connection that forced him to carry the weight of every tear he had ever caused, proving that true justice isn't always found in a courtroom, but in the inescapable reality of feeling another person's pain as if it were your own. The story of Thornhill Plantation remains a shadow in the official records, a footnote buried under the weight of proper history. Yet it lives on in the strength of every person who stands up against an impossible tide, reminding us that even when we are fed the bitter bread of affliction, we can choose to let it change us into something stronger, something faster, and something undeniably free. We see this legacy in the way we still fight for the light in the darkness, the way we seek out the railroads of our own era, and the way we recognize that our greatest power often comes from the very things meant to destroy us, provided we have the courage to swallow the bitterness and let the transformation begin. As the sun sets on the story of Caleb, Daniel, Miriam, and Naomi, it rises on a world where their blood still flows, carrying with it the quiet, humming power of the earth itself, a silent promise that no matter how deep the burial, the truth will always find a way to grow toward the sun, breaking through the dirt of the past to breathe the sweet, cool air of a morning that belongs to everyone. There is a profound mystery in the way the earth provides for those who have nothing left, a hidden alchemy that turns mold into muscle and fear into foresight. And as we look back at the flickering lights of those Georgia woods, we realize that we are all, in some way, the products of what we have survived, woven together by threads of memory and biology into a tapestry that is as resilient as it is eternal. The legacy of the Thornhill survivors did not simply fade into the dry pages of a census report, or vanish like smoke into the industrial smog of the rising north, but instead, it settled into the very marrow of the American landscape as a silent, vibrating frequency that could only be heard by those who knew how to listen to the whispers of the soil, for the change that began with a mouthful of bitter, moldy bread was not a localized event, but a cosmic shift in the definition of human endurance, a biological revolution that proved that when the soul is pushed to the edge of extinction, the body will find a way to rewrite its own laws, bridging the gap between the animal and the vegetable, the sentient and the elemental, until the distinction between the man and the forest became as thin as a single thread of mycelium stretching across the dark floor of a Georgia wood. As Caleb watched his children grow in the cool, lake-scented air of Ohio, he felt the constant, rhythmic pulse of the network within him, a living map of every soul he had touched, every person he had shared the gift with, realizing that they were no longer a collection of isolated fugitives, but a single massive organism breathing in unison across hundreds of miles, a hidden nation of the enhanced who carried the history of their suffering not as a burden but as a superpower, their eyes catching the moonlight in ways that defied the physics of the mundane world, and their hearts beating with a slow, deliberate strength that could outlast any winter. And as the 19th century gave way to the 20th, this secret lineage moved through the world like ghosts in the machinery of progress, working in the steel mills of Pittsburgh with tireless limbs, walking the docks of New York with senses that could detect a storm 3 days away, and standing on the front lines of every battle for justice with an uncanny calm that unnerved their oppressors, because they knew what the world had forgotten, that power does not come from the whip or the deed of ownership, but from the ability to transform the rot of the old world into the soil of the new. We must consider the profound irony that the very act intended to dehumanize Caleb, forcing him to eat filth, became the catalyst for his apotheo. Sis, a divine joke played by the universe on the architects of cruelty, ensuring that the seeds of their own destruction were planted in the very people they sought to break. And as this fungal consciousness expanded, it brought with it a new kind of morality based on the literal feeling of another's pulse, a radical empathy that made violence impossible because to strike another was to feel the impact in one's own nerves, a biological mandate for peace that the rest of the world was not yet ready to accept. Even as the physical bodies of the original 22 survivors eventually returned to the earth, they did not truly die, but merely reintegrated into the great network, their memories and experiences uploading to the collective mycelial web that thrives beneath our feet, so that today, when you walk through an ancient forest or stand in a field where history was made, the static you feel in the air or the sudden clarity of your thoughts might just be an echo of Caleb's strength or Naomi's hope, a lingering fragment of a story that refused to stay buried in the dirt of a Georgia plantation, reminding us that the light in our eyes is a fire that was lit in the darkest night of the soul and has been passed down, hand to hand, breath to breath, through the long, winding corridors of time until it reaches us here, in this moment, asking us what we will do with the bread we are given and how we will choose to change in a world that is always trying to break us. The air above Thornhill is still hot in August, and the shadows of the old cabin still stretch like long dark fingers across the red clay. But the spirit of the place has been hollowed out, the power having migrated long ago to the cities and the suburbs, where the descendants of the changed move among us, unrecognized but essential, their heightened senses allowing them to see the beauty in the breakdown and the in the decay, acting as the silent stewards of a future that is still being woven from the threads of a miraculous past, a past where a man named Caleb looked into the eyes of his daughter and decided that he would become a monster to his masters if it meant he could be a hero to his children, and in doing so, he taught us all that the most terrifying thing a man can do is refuse to be less than human, even when the world is screaming at him to crawl. The story ends not with a whimper of defeat, but with the thunderous silence of 1,000 hearts beating in a synchronization that no army can stop and no law can bind, a testament to the fact that freedom is not a gift granted by the powerful, but a transformation earned by the brave, a biological imperative that begins in the gut and ends in the stars, leaving us to wonder, as we look into the mirror and catch a strange glint in our own eyes, if perhaps the change has already begun in us too, if we are the next link in the chain, the next spore in the wind, the next chapter in a script that has no final page and no final word, only the eternal shimmering heat of a Georgia sun that couldn't melt the resolve of a man who found his soul in the mold.